Okay, so you want to own a bail bonds company. Someone gets arrested, they can't afford the full bail amount, so they come to you, pay a small percentage up front, and you cover the rest by promising the court you'll pay the entire bail if they skip their court date. It's a fee-based business built on a customer base that regenerates itself every single day. In an industry generating over $2.3 billion in annual revenue nationwide, you're not lending money in any normal sense. You're selling a guarantee, and guarantees rarely get called in. That is the dream, and it is not entirely wrong. Here's what it doesn't tell you. This is one of the only businesses in America where a single state legislature can vote your entire product out of existence overnight, and it just happened for the first time in the country's history in 2023. Let's start with what it costs to open one. Registration alone runs $300 to $1,000 depending on the state, and licensing, which typically requires pre-licensing coursework, an exam, and fingerprinting, runs another $250 to $650 on top of that. Total startup costs for a genuinely operational bail bonds business generally run $15,000 to $50,000, though that range hides the single largest and most variable expense in the entire industry, the collateral, often called a build-up fund, that a surety company requires before it will back your bonds at all. Some states set that bar remarkably high. Texas, for example, requires a minimum $50,000 collateral deposit just to get a surety partnership approved, meaning your actual entry cost in a high collateral state can jump dramatically past the numbers advertised in most industry guides. Here's the part of the business model almost nobody outside the industry understands correctly. Most bail bondsmen don't cover the full bail amount out of their own pocket. Instead, they partner with an insurance company, or surety, that provides the financial backing, meaning the bondsman is really selling access to someone else's balance sheet in exchange for a fee, typically 10 to 15% of the bail amount, which the surety and the bondsman split, with the surety commonly taking 15 to 30% of the bondsman's own revenue as its cut for absorbing the underlying risk. Additional collateral from the client, real estate, vehicles, or other valuable property secures the bond further and protects the bondsman if things go wrong. This structure is exactly why the business can scale without requiring you to personally hold 6 or 7 figures in cash reserves. But it also means your margins are permanently split with a partner whose approval you need to stay in business at all. Once you're licensed and backed, the day-to-day economics are straightforward. The average bail amount nationally runs around $11,700, and at a typical 10% fee, that's roughly $1,170 in gross revenue per bond, non-refundable regardless of the case's outcome. A working bondsman commonly earns $50,000 to $150,000 a year, with profit margins running 10 to 15% of total bond volume once you account for the surety's cut, office overhead, and marketing. And marketing itself has become a genuinely difficult line item since Google banned bail bond advertising outright in 2018, meaning SEO and local reputation have become the primary customer acquisition channel in an industry that can no longer simply buy its way to visibility the way most local service businesses can. Here's the trap sitting underneath the entire industry, and it's not the risk most new bondsmen worry about first. New owners tend to fixate on defendant flight risk, the fear that a client skips court and the bondsman has to eat the full bail amount or hire a recovery agent to track them down. That risk is real, and it's exactly why collateral requirements exist. But the far larger structural risk is regulatory, not operational, because unlike almost any other small business, your entire product depends on a specific legal mechanism, cash bail itself, remaining part of the justice system in your state. That mechanism has existed for centuries in America. It is not guaranteed to exist forever, and in 2023 it stopped existing at all in one state. Now, the disaster case study, and it's the single clearest structural risk this industry has ever faced. On September 18, 2023, Illinois became the first state in American history to eliminate cash bail entirely under the Pretrial Fairness Act, part of a broader criminal justice reform package first passed by the state legislature in early 2021. Under the new system, judges make direct release or detain decisions based on public safety and flight risk rather than a defendant's ability to pay, replacing money bonds with GPS monitoring, check-in requirements, and risk-based detention hearings for serious offenses. The effect on the bail bonds industry in Illinois was immediate and total. There was no phase-out period, no grandfather clause for existing bondsmen, and no transitional revenue stream. Bail bondsmen simply ceased operating in the state on that date because there was no longer any monetary bail to post against. 1 year later, advocates and state officials reported that roughly $140 million that would previously have gone to bond payments instead stayed directly in Illinois communities, money that, under the old system, would have flowed through the exact fee structure that funded the bail bonds industry in the first place. Illinois remains the only state to have eliminated cash bail entirely, and the reform has become a closely watched national test case, with several other states and jurisdictions now actively debating similar measures. For a bail bondsman operating anywhere in Illinois before September 2023, no amount of operational excellence, marketing spend, or careful collateral management would have preserved the business, because the product itself, access to cash bail as a mechanism, was removed from the legal system entirely by a legislative vote that had been building for over 2 years before it finally took effect. Let's run the numbers on 2 scenarios. Optimistic case: you open a licensed bail bonds office for $30,000 in a state with stable, long-standing cash bail laws and no active reform movement, positioned near the county courthouse and jail exactly as industry guides recommend. Writing roughly 200 bonds a year at an average $11,700 bail amount and a 10% fee, you generate $234,000 in gross bond revenue. And after your sureties cut, office overhead, and marketing, you clear a genuine $35,000 to $50,000 in annual profit. A modest but durable small business income stream as long as the underlying legal framework stays in place. Realistic case: the same $30,000 investment in a state where bail reform advocacy has been building for years, exactly Illinois' trajectory between 2021 and 2023. Revenue and operations look completely normal for the first several years, with no visible warning sign in your day-to-day business that anything is about to change. Then a legislative session passes reform, courts implement it on a fixed effective date, and unlike almost any other small business facing a shifting market, there is no slow decline to adapt to, no gradual loss of customers to a competitor, no pricing pressure to respond to. The entire revenue mechanism simply stops existing on a single day, and every dollar you invested in licensing, collateral, and marketing becomes stranded capital in a business that legally cannot operate anymore. So if you decide to own a bail bonds company, understand what you're actually buying. You're not just buying a fee-based financial guarantee business with a self-renewing customer base, though it genuinely can be that for as long as the underlying system stays in place. You're buying a business whose entire legal foundation is a single state law that has already been eliminated once in one state, after years of building political momentum that gave almost no warning to the bondsman operating there the week before it happened. Run it well in a state where cash bail is stable, and this remains one of the most durable, recession-resistant small businesses in America. Build it in a state actively debating reform, and you may be running a perfectly profitable business right up until the day it's simply no longer legal to exist.